Hello, everyone. Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bale. I am your host, as always, on Extra, and it's a great week to be back and back into business. And joining me to discuss the long return of Rangers into action this weekend against Kilmarnock down in Ayrshire is my very good friend, Mr. Ross Hutton. Ross, thanks so much for coming along and joining me.
No, thank you very much, Cammy. It's good to get this show back on the road. Do you see what I did there? See what I did there?
Yeah, nice. I like it. Yes, it's always interesting, Ross, right? And I thought I would probably get a little bit easier with this as I got a bit older. I don't like the international breaks. I hate international football at the best of times. Um, I'll talk about your love of it in just a moment. But whenever we have a break, and I know that Rangers, they've not really been doing brilliantly recently. So it's kind of been all right to take a wee bit of a break. They don't stress you out across the weekend. That's all lovely. But see, after about 4 hours of the international break starting, I'm like, when are Rangers coming back? I really miss them. Like, I just want a bag of cans and my club back. But the good news is, as I say, we're only a couple of days shy of being able to get back into action. How was your international break? You're an avid Scotland fan. Did you make it? Did you go to Hampden against Portugal to go and see Ronaldo?
I wasn't there in person for Ronaldo's, we have to be honest, but it was a pleasure watching it on the TV. And listen, my love affair for international football is well documented, but it is just that. It's a love affair. It's something that I do feel in my heart and soul, but it is also bolted on extra to Rangers. Nothing will ever take over or replace the love that you have for Rangers. And while I do think when we're in the heat of the season and you've got an international break coming up and you do maybe get into your head, and I'm more than certain that I've been guilty of saying it on podcasts before, Cammy, that just get through to the international break, get a wee rest, and as all, players and fans and management alike, and then pick up again when you come back. But it's all fun and games until you actually get to that international break. And while I've got plenty of investment in it, being a Scotland fan, I know plenty of people out there don't have that level of investment, and it must be a brutal 2 weeks, especially once you get past the initial weekend or you get to that Saturday and Sunday and there's no Rangers for your enjoyment. You're thinking, I don't really know how other people get through their weekend without having any football on. So it's good to be back to the real stuff now, and it always is and always will be the real stuff.
Yeah, the only slight disappointment I had for any of our players in the international break, Ross, was felt a little bit bad for Connor Barron. He obviously got yanked out of the under 21 squad and put into the full team squad for the game against Portugal. I think it was James Forrest who ended up pulling out and he ended up having to replace him. Forgive me if I'm wrong in saying that. I would have liked to have seen him been able to participate against Portugal. Um, we'll talk about another Rangers player who I thought actually was pretty exceptional against Portugal. But yeah, it would have been great because I think we've all got a vested interest in Connor Barron now. He's absolutely won our hearts, and great for him to be able to try and get some of that exposure. It also shows when you move to a far bigger club like Rangers, you get involved within the international scene. It means a hell of a lot to these players to be able to go and represent our country. And my hope is that this is the beginning of Connor Barron being more involved with the full international squad because, as far as I'm concerned, he absolutely deserves it.
He's a massive asset to Scotland going forward, as much as he's a massive asset to Rangers, of course. And because he's had that exposure playing at a really good level, obviously we're all disappointed to not be in the Champions League, and that's an enduring frustration with this season. He is playing at a really good level. In Europe, okay, didn't have the best game against Lyon, but he's a young guy, still a young player learning to apply his trade, and that'll be a good learning curve for him and a good learning experience. And sometimes, as much as you hate to say it, you do need to make mistakes in order to be able to learn from them. And I doubt he'll be playing blind passes like that back into the middle of the park anytime soon. And playing at that high level, getting that exposure, playing week in, week out for a club like Rangers, it does boost your profile and it does give you that next step up into the national side. I would like to have seen Connor Barron be utilised more, not just obviously in the game against Portugal, but I would like him to have been in the initial squad that went away to Croatia. So it's a disappointment that he wasn't, but now he is in that squad. I would like him to maintain that place. Scotland are fortunate in a sense that they do have a lot of good midfield options in there. Let's not kid ourselves. He's not Billy Gilmore. He's not Scott McTominay yet. Lewis Ferguson's coming back from injury soon as well. So there's plenty of players that, if he does get a regular call up into the national squad, that he can learn from. And I think that, from a Rangers perspective, is something we should be really, really excited about, Cammy. It's the fact that if he's playing not just at that high level in a European sense with Rangers. But if he's going away with Scotland as well and learning from players like McTominay, Gilmore, Lewis Ferguson, picking up wee bits and pieces from them as well, that only benefits us both as a club and as a national team as well.
Maldini, Baresi, Beckenbauer, Suter. I mean, that's your Mount Rushmore now of defenders, as far as I'm concerned. I will argue anyone to the death who says otherwise. Joking aside, an excellent night, I thought, for John Suter. I know that we've spoken before about him, Ross, that he does feel like a siege defender, right? And I think that's where he thrives. He's going to have practice of that across the course of this season for sure. But when you consider who he was playing against and the calibre of the highest level of players that he was playing against for Portugal, even outside of Ronaldo, who, by the way, let's face it, can still kick a ball. I thought Suter was excellent. A couple of wee ropey moments, not like a absolute 100 out of 10 performance, of course, but again, cementing his place, I feel, within that Scotland defence. And the reason why I make mention of it, as I say, I'm not a huge follower of the Scottish national team any longer. But the reason why I mention it is because, again, I think it provides a huge validation of how far Suter has come in terms of his performances for Rangers, that he's then been able to contribute at that same level for his country. And we've spoken a lot on the network across the last few weeks about where we've seen improvements from Suter. And I think you saw the evidence of that on Tuesday night.
100%, and you're right to caveat it almost by saying it's a type of game that I think really suits John Suter's skill set, that siege defending and purely defending, not really having to focus on much else. But in the same sense, I'm not sure that's much of a criticism towards him. Defenders love defending, or they should. If you don't love defending as a defender, then you're in the wrong profession, I'm afraid. And John Suter acquitted himself very, very well against Portugal. It was a man-of-the-match performance. I think he thoroughly deserved that accolade. To my mind, I can't remember a time that John Suter has ever let Scotland down. Now, partially that is because he plays in a system that allows him that support and allows him to defend in a way that really does complement his natural skill set. But in the same sense, you need to go out and do the job. You know what I mean? It's one thing just playing in a side or playing in a game state that allows you to show your best attributes. You've still got to go and do it. And especially when you're trying to defend against Ronaldo for 90 minutes, you're right, he can still kick a ball. He's not a bad player, that guy. I'd take him at Rangers if I was being honest. So to go and be able to do that, again, it's only a good thing for Rangers. I know there's a lot of debate about is it actually a good thing or not for Rangers to be sending players, not just to Scotland, although I get there's a stronger depth feeling there, but away in the world on international duty. But if they're going away and they're getting minutes and particularly and essentially playing well, then that's only a good thing for us. So he's now coming back into the Rangers camp full of confidence, on a high. It was a very, very well-earned point against Portugal. I think Scotland, in the main, across the group, have been quite unlucky not to pick up more points than what they have. And I'm by no means Steve Clarke's biggest fan, and I'm saying that. So it's good for John Suter to get that level of recognition across the board. And as I said, on commentary, Charlie Mulgrew, who's absolutely no fan of Rangers and no natural friend of ours, gave him man of the match and was glowing about his performance, which I think says it all. I think he cut through many divides away with Scotland and really did show his quality. So if he can come back to Rangers on a high and in a really good state of mind and fitness after that, then as I keep banging on about Cammy, that's only a good and positive thing for us.
Another player, Ross, who should absolutely feel that way is Casemiro, who had a couple of excellent performances. I think for the Dutch under-21s, he absolutely shone out. I think he got a couple of assists, I believe, across that period. I'm really interested. We will obviously talk about the killer game in just a second. But I'm really interested to see how we continue this young man's momentum, because I think in the bit part appearances he's had thus far for Rangers that he's played really well. He seems to have again emulated that for his country. They certainly value him, and I'll be keen to see if we can continue his involvement on Sunday.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously the deal of the transfer, the loan transfer that we've got for Casemiro is a loan with an option to buy next summer. And I would imagine that is probably with an eye to moving Tab on next summer. There was obviously a lot of chat about it during the transfer window that's just passed. It never materialised. Next summer, I think, would be a natural break for everybody. That would be Tab's 10-year mark. And we're not saying anything controversial here, I don't believe, but he's not the player that he was even a couple of years ago. I think time's very much caught up with him. So if you can get Casemiro in for a year, assess him, and then if all things going swimmingly in the way we would all hope it would go, utilise that option to buy next summer, then that's good business for us. And I would definitely encourage people to go and have a look at the assist that he managed to get over in his duty with the Dutch under-21s, because it was two fantastic assists, particularly the first one, Cammy, the stronger right foot, albeit over from the left-hand side of the pitch, but it was an absolutely delicious ball in. And I think, like a lot of people, the concern was that if and when Tav is to move on from his Cammy, would we be able to replace that level of output? Now, the answer is probably no, because of the sheer volume of it that Tav has provided over the years. But if we can get a right back who can, A, first and foremost, fulfil those defensive duties, but B, also be able to still chip in with goals and primarily probably assists in that regard as well, then even better, because you still need to have that diverse array of attacking options. You don't want to just bin that strategy entirely. It's still a really, really good thing to have, particularly in a league like ours where maybe you do need a fantastic ball in from your right back out wide. So if we can see more of that, and hopefully over the course of the season we will, we can maybe bleed him into the side a wee bit more and take that pressure off of Tav, and he can build up that sustained momentum play and get minutes in the legs and then show us that different skill set that he can bring. Again, it would be absolutely fantastic to see. So it's good for him to go away and give us a wee bit of a better idea about what kind of player he can be as well, because if he's building up, as I keep saying, that confidence away in international duty, brings that back into Rangers, then thumbs up from us.
Yeah, listen, totally agree. I think we've said it before, and it's about the manager being able to try and use his resources. I have been a big champion of being able to try and reduce James Tavernier's minutes. I appreciate that it can be quite a divisive subject with Rangers fans in terms of what happens next with him. But for me, I've said it. I've said it a few years ago that there's games that he doesn't have to play in. He can be rested. He's been overutilised as far as I'm concerned, and that's not James Tavernier's fault, by the way. Please don't think that. He's not picking himself. He's had a number of managers who have continued to play him when he really didn't have to, such as cup games, etc., against lower league opposition and what have you. But all that to one side, we need to be able to see. I think that we don't have any issues within the team that stop us being able to try and continue to develop. The manager has said before he expects his best Rangers team to be in around about October, November time. We are pretty much hitting that target now. So it will be interesting to see what happens. Just before we do talk about Kilmarnock, Ross, I'm just keen to get your thoughts. There was a statement issued by Rangers from John Gilligan, the interim chairman, yesterday. I think by and large the update was really just a message out to the fans to talk about current state of play, but there obviously was an underlying message in terms of the fine from UEFA from use of pyrotechnics within the stadium. It happened against Malmo and it happened against Lyon as well. A little bit for me, Ross, of a shot across the bow there. And it's been an interesting topic for the Rangers fan base to talk about, I think, because I think that the vast majority of people I know support guys like the Union Bears and people who will bring atmosphere into Ibrox. There's been times where it has been far, far too quiet. And I do believe wholeheartedly that there's a symbiotic relationship between what happens in the stands and what happens on the pitch. If fans are pissed off, I think it bleeds into the players. I appreciate people listen to us and go, well, players need to up their game a wee bit. That's totally fair. But there's also a point when you look at that word of support that you need to back the team when the team are down. And I think the Union Bears try to inject some of that during the quieter periods of the game. I sit facing the Copeland in the main stand front. I think you're a little bit further away from that direction in the Govan in Bar 72. But I've certainly enjoyed it a lot more having them closer to me. So I enjoy the noise. I think that the chairman's statement, though, for me, does ring true, because the last thing that we want to be able to do is, aside from fines, when we're not exactly sitting with plenty of cash in the bank, do hurt us. We're also very susceptible because we're not in one of the big leagues. We know that UEFA are easy to make sure they pick on some of the smaller teams within their tournaments. And I hate to say that Rangers are very much one of them that they can make an example of. They will start cracking down on this pretty much soon enough, because they'll start inducing things like, bans for away fans, etc. That's going to be a big blow for us if we have to go through this. I suppose really what I would be keen to get your take on is the Union Bears trying to do things a little bit differently, but also having to respect where the line is.
Yeah, so first things first on the fact that there actually was a communication out from the club. One of my biggest criticisms about Rangers for years now was the lack of communication between the board and the fans. I don't think I was alone in that. I think that was pretty widespread, to be honest. It was a massive criticism, particularly of the last set of board members, as they didn't come out and engage with fans and keep us in the loop. So the fact that Rangers are now taking a more proactive approach to the communications is something that I'm really going to welcome. The actual contents of it we'll discuss in a second, but the very fact they're doing it, I think, is something that we should probably all welcome, because I do get a wee bit frustrated when I see the quote tweets or the replies or whatever saying, "Oh, well, it doesn't tell me this, and that." Things like, well, they're still telling you something, and maybe that's the best update they could give at that minute, but it's an update nonetheless. And so I'm really trying not to sound like a board apologist or anything like that. It's not what I'm trying to be at all. But I do think we should pick our battles on that front. On the actual contents of the statement as well, I think you're right. The Union Bears are a group that I'm a massive fan of. I think they've brought something really quite special to Ibrox over the years in terms of the atmospheres. The move to the Copeland was something, and I'd say this as someone who doesn't sit in the Copeland, so it didn't directly impact me in that sense, but it was something that I did fully support in principle, because that is the Rangers end. I think it makes a lot of sense to have the Rangers Ultras in the Rangers end, creating that kind of stadium atmosphere. I think there's been maybe one or two teething problems with that, but listen, that will change as time goes on. As you get used to the thing, then you'll be more comfortable with the thing, as is ever thus. I did, at the time during the Leon game, think that especially the kind of firework rockets thing being blasted over the heads of the players on the pitch was a bit much. I'm not saying over the heads, I'm not meaning aimed at them or anything silly like that, but just aiming it over the general direction of the pitch. I did think at the time we could end up in hot water there. I think the club are right to come out and ask them to not do that, because it would be some horrendous irony, Cammy, and in a sense very Rangers, if we were to spend all that time and all that money trying to redo the Copeland and then it gets shut, because UEFA will not fuck about on this. We know this by now. They're very hard to get on the good side of it and very easy to displease, and they will not mess about, as you've rightly said, in terms of either giving us fines or then increasing up the punishment ladder, which could start with a stand closure or even worse, a stadium closure, and then whatever precious little revenue we do get from the Europa League is lessened, and you've got fines on top of that, so you end up losing money. It's not what anyone wants. It's not what the UB wants, I know that for a fact. So if we can just tone that down a wee bit while still bringing the fantastic atmosphere that I do think they do, then that benefits absolutely everybody. The other thing that I noticed in the statement yesterday, Cammy, was just confirmation again that Craig Robertson is leaving his role as Director of Football Operations. Craig Robertson was somebody that myself and James knew very well at our time covering the B team. He was always incredibly helpful and kind to us. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to him and my best wishes for whatever he does next.
What a sook.
Oh.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. No, listen, I do applaud that. We do get a lot of support from people at the club when we are helping cover various different games. Whether or not it's European, domestic, the B team, etc. So listen, I absolutely echo that, and we are very fortunate to be in that position. So on to Ayrshire, Ross, and back down to that shitty pitch. I'm not going to talk too much about it because thankfully I think this is the last season of it and they're doing the right thing by ripping up and actually putting in a proper one. Kilmarnock have not had a great start to the season. They have been scoring goals, but they've also been conceding goals as well. Again, we know that Rangers have done well, and once we've got back to Ibrox, that defensively we've looked a little bit easier when you take the Leon game out of it, of course. But we have been improving domestically. That's important to note. It'll be an interesting lineup, I think, to be able to see. Now, we are not able to give you any injury updates because the press conference hasn't happened yet. Obviously, that will come out in due course. How optimistic are you feeling about being able to get down to Kelly and putting on what I would like to be able to say is the dream scenario of a good result and a good performance? Because I think we've been guilty recently of getting a good result. Maybe the performance hasn't been brilliant, or just feeling that we've got another level that we can hopefully get to. And maybe that's in line with what the manager had said previously about his best Rangers team that he's looking to create.
Yeah, I was really happy you brought up those managers' comments that basically told us that we'll be seeing the best version of this Rangers starting from October, November. So we do really want to start seeing signs of that now, and I'm a wee bit uncertain as why the manager actually said that at the time. Okay, it might have bought him some breathing space in the moment that he said it, but you do make yourself a hostage to fortune when you do make those kind of statements. So if we don't start seeing the performances to match results quick time, as in now, then people are going to rightly start to ask questions and say, okay, well, you told me I'd be getting a better version of Rangers over the next 4 weeks. Why hasn't it materialised yet? But let's not criticise him for things and hypotheticals that haven't happened. How confident am I about going to get a performance as well as a result? Not particularly. I don't think Rugby Park is ever somewhere that we as Rangers fans pinpoint and say, oh, we'll play really, really well there. I can't really remember the last time that we did go to Rugby Park and play fantastic. Maybe Stephen Gerrard in the League Cup years and years ago when we won 3-0 in the Morelos hat-trick game. Apart from that, I'm shrugging my shoulders a wee bit here, to be honest, Cammy. The thing about the pitch is, again, I don't think I'm alone in saying this. I'm sick of hearing it. I really, really am sick of hearing it. I understand it's the last season of it, and hopefully we won't have to endure it far too much more across the broad spectrum of the league. But you know what you're getting into now. You know, I know there's plenty of new players in this side who maybe haven't experienced that before, but as a club, we know where we're at. You should be able to prepare for that. So I don't think that's an excuse that is going to wash with the support at all. On the other
Do you
side,
know, sorry to cut into that, Ross, but do you know when I stopped listening and caring about that excuse was when we were in the lower leagues and, we talked about the surface at Alloa. And I remember opponents in the league came up with this unbelievable idea, this breakthrough, genius idea of rent the stadium at Alloa and get used to the surface, play some practice games on it, do some training on it, get used to the surface. And I was stunned to hear that such things could happen. So the minute that you know that you're able to get access to it, stop moaning about it. It isn't an excuse. And Kelly's pitch, and I don't. By the way, to that point, no, I'm sick of talking about it as well. I just feel that you just can't use that excuse any longer. We've got a state of the art training facility as well. It also has surfaces that should be amenable to that. We just have to wipe this out now. It's just can't be a thing any longer. I'm glad they're getting rid of it, but it's not something, as you say, that we can hang our hat on if we don't play well. And I hope the manager doesn't come out post match, even after a victory, and say, yeah, the surface is not great, blah blah, what have you. We just need to eradicate it now, I think, from all of our dialogue.
yeah, and I can understand people listening saying, well, you're spending a lot of time talking about something you said you didn't want to talk about. I completely appreciate that, but it is just worth saying I don't think anyone is interested in that as an excuse. And the other side of the coin, as you rightly pointed out, Cam, is that Kilmarnock have not really started the season that well. Of course, they did have European qualifiers over the summer months there, but generally their domestic form has been pretty poor. They obviously had that really good comeback win away at Dundee just before the international break there, but well, yeah, you're right. They are scoring goals. They're conceding them by the bucket load as well. I think it's 17 they've conceded in the league already this season, which is the second worst record in the league. They're not a fantastic side, and I understand that again that Derek McInnes is very good at setting up his sides to play the Old Firm, but that's not an excuse either. You should be good enough to go there on Sunday, and you take out all the noise and all the nonsense that goes with going to Rugby Park. We should be good enough to go there and get a result. It's just about whether this Rangers team will be in the right frame of mind to be able to do so. As I said, Rugby Park is not somewhere that I pinpoint for a performance. It is somewhere I pinpoint for a get the result and get up the road. And we should have more than enough about us to be able to go there and do that, Cammy.
Listen, I agree, and it is funny as you talk about. We're not going to talk about the pitch. Rule one is you don't talk about the Kelly pitch, but yeah, there we are. It will be interesting. I think we touched a little bit there, Ross, obviously in selection lineup, and something I think for me will be interesting is the options up front, because we've seen Egeman come in. And I think that he has shown that he's definitely got capability. There's been other games where I think the best way I can describe it is that I think he's kind of overworked himself a little bit. Like he's been a bit over eager to be able to get into positions. He's maybe dropped a little bit further back or went out onto the flanks to be able to try and accommodate that. I get it because he has missed a bit of football. He's been obviously getting up to speed, getting his match fitness sorted as well. Cyril Dessers, I'm going to defend in terms of his reaction. Previously, when you get substituted, and he looked a little bit pissed off about it. And I said at the time, I'm glad, because I want my players to look like, they want to stay in the park. They want to, remain involved and contribute what they can. But I'm sure the manager has spoken to him, because it's not let him sit him back. I mean, Dessers come back and he has been able to perform. For me, the most important thing, Ross, is that we're able to go and provide a threat early doors. I mentioned, earlier, Kilmarnock are capable of scoring goals. They're capable of conceding them for sure. They've had a lot of high scoring draws, 2-2s, 3-3s, etc. Dessers, if he does start for me on Sunday afternoon, it has to almost make sure that he doesn't have one of those games where, he misses a few chances and it takes him a few tries to be able to try and get one over the line. In an ideal world, an early goal for him just calms his confidence down, doesn't make him question himself when he gets into those situations. And almost to a certain extent, get back to what we saw early on in the season, when he was taking shots first time and he was lashing them home because he didn't dilly-dally. There was a really interesting article came out during the week as well about him speaking to a sports psychologist, which I actually think was a pretty brave thing to come out and talk about. There is too much made of mental health openness, in terms of we don't talk about it enough. We absolutely do not. I totally agree with that. I'm a huge advocate for being able to say it's okay to not be okay and to lean into people when you need that help. And I thought it was an interesting insight from him, in terms of some of his pre-Rangers, challenges that he's had. What I want to see from the big man is just to be able to go out there, be assured, stay in your feet, win the physical battles, take your chances. And if you do have a competition for your place, make sure that you give the manager a good solid reminder as to why you deserve that shirt.
Yeah, we very much need Dessers to not have that kind of performance like he's had lots and lots of times in the past, where he does need those 3, 4, 5 chances to be able just to convert one. Because as we know, games at Rugby Park, they can have a lot of stasis with very few points of punctuation. So when you do create a chance, you do get an opening, they might be few and far between. You need to have the clinical nature in your side to be able to take those opportunities. And again, it's that evergreen criticism of Rangers that we just simply seemingly don't have the quality to be able to do that. That can't be the case if we're to go and win the game on Sunday, because, as I said, you just need to have that clinical nature in your bones. It's the biggest criticism of Dessers is that he will score goals over the course of a season. I think we know that now. He will contribute. We know that now. It's just in those big games, in those big moments that could decide the league by the end of the season. I know that talk seems fanciful, I get that, but as a general point, those are the kind of moments that do make or break it over the course of a 38-game league season. Does he have it in him to go and be clinical? Please go show us that on Sunday, because it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely to be a game of loads and loads of chances, as much as Kilmarnock do score a bit and concede a bit. I would expect them to go and sit in and make our life very, very difficult, even despite the fact that at home we know how Derek McInnes likes to play these games. So when we do create an opening, when we do break that lock, can you go and convert the chance? And that's a challenge to him on Sunday as well. As well as Igaman, if he comes into the side, probably as a substitute. I think we're all near enough certain, barring any late injuries, that Dessers will probably start this game. If Igaman can come off the bench and then provide something a wee bit different, particularly if it's getting to 60, 65 minutes and the game's still tight, can you go and be a hero and provide a difference? So there's plenty of incentive there for our forward players on Sunday to go and really make a big statement to the manager and say, listen, in those big moments, I'm your man. Dessers will almost certainly start and have the shirt, so a fantastic opportunity for him to go and do that.
And listen, do you know what? I'd like to see Egaman get involved at some point, because I think he needs to make sure that he's getting some minutes on the park. I don't think he's unfit, by the way. I don't mean it like that. I don't think he's still getting back to fitness, but just to help him raise his confidence levels a little bit more, get settled into being able to play that level. And he's going to, I think he will produce, Ross. I think he will contribute across the course of the season, because you've seen glimpses of it, I think, already. And again, I tailor that to the fact that there's also been times where I do think he's just been a little bit marauding, because he's wanted to be more involved within the play. He doesn't want to sit at the moment. He doesn't want to sit at the forward line and then wait for the ball to come to him. He wants to be more involved. And listen, that will naturally start to balance out once he he is more involved. So I can definitely see that. Just taking it a step back, Ross, in terms of the number 10 position now, again, we don't know if Tom Lawrence will be fit. But we have seen Bedrami touted for being able to come into that number 10 role. We will obviously have Yanis Hadji back available for selection again. He was away in international duty too, but he is now very much coming back into the frame. Do you have a preference, assuming Lawrence is fit, as to who slots in there? Would you like to see any changes, or do you think the manager will revert back to Lawrence as his preferred option?
I could see the manager going with Lawrence as a 10 if he is fit, but purely because of the form that Lawrence has been in recently. He's not let the manager or Rangers down, and in fact, in tight games, he's been the difference maker, which is something he's always had the potential to be for Rangers, but I don't think we've quite seen to the same level as we have recently. He's going through a real purple patch of form there, and I know we've paid big money for Bedrami, and he will inevitably move into that number 10 role, but hey, listen, you've got to earn it. It's not a God-given right just because we paid a bit of money for you, and I wouldn't fix what's not broken. Happy for Bedrami to play. I really like what I've seen of him so far, and that's the big caveat so far, but I think he does offer this Rangers team something that we don't necessarily already have, which is obviously what you want when you bring a new player in, particularly for a larger fee as we've paid for him. So he's very exciting. But that number 10 shirt right now, in my mind at least, belongs to Tom Lawrence, because he has shown, just what we spoke about a minute ago, Cammy, he has shown that in those big games and big moments, he can stand up and deliver, whether it is away at Dundee United, at home at Hibs, he was a difference maker as well. And when he is in that kind of vein of form, and his confidence is high, then I wouldn't go blowing that up by not starting him in a game like this, because he's shown so far that he can stand up and be the man. I could definitely see a situation where if Tom Lawrence isn't fit, then obviously that shirt goes to Bedrami. That's the natural default, and I think he has a lot to offer there. But just because, as I said, we've paid a lot of money for you doesn't give you the God-given right to it. So if he can go and earn it on Sunday, fantastic. I want this competition for players, Cammy. This is something that really excites me. It's something that we've not had a lot in recent years because the depth of the squad has not been as good as what we'd want it to be. I think I described it last season as a squad being a mile wide in terms of a squad picture because it was that big, but about an inch deep in actual quality and depth. We might be getting to a position now where we're moving away from that and actually seeing a wee bit of quality across the board and in the depth as well. If you think of the left back position, you've got Hefty and Yilmaz. You think in the midfield, we've got options there as well. Bedrami and Lawrence. You want to see it up top. You want to see a good fight between Dessers, Danilo and Igaman. So hopefully we're moving into a position now where we can start to see all these different pieces of the puzzle come together. And as the manager says, see that best version of the Rangers in October, November. But to go back to the initial question, if Lawrence is fit, I'd stick with Lawrence.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I agree with you in terms of I would like to see Lawrence return to that because I think he's had a really good run of form. The injuries a setback. There's no doubt around that. So my hope is that if we do give him the start, then he's able to recover some of that, and he just puts the injury behind him. I think that there's been times where we have had players who have taken a knock, and this isn't necessarily criticism, by the way, but it's absolutely peak Rangers at the moment. That the minute a player starts playing well, he's inevitably going to get some sort of innocuous injury, and then at that stage, once they do come back, we have a bit of a delay for them to be able to try and get back into form, and then that delay becomes longer and longer. It's just incredibly frustrating, but it's frustrating for the player as well. So I can totally get that. I would just like Lawrence, if he's able to come back in, to recover that as best he possibly can for him, because we do know that he has missed a fair bit of football. But Tom Lawrence also knows how good a footballer he is and what a difference he can make. Of our points already this season, he's responsible for 6 of them. Scoring two winners himself, so he absolutely can play a key part in that. The Bajrami conversation, I think, is interesting. There are definitely options that we can have to be able to try and play him out there. At the moment, just now, especially with the Cortez injury, I think that the manager is trying a little bit to fill some square pegs with round with round positions, but it's tough because the manager has to be able to try and see as to how he can put out his best possible 11, but he's also going to have to manage that throughout the game as well, and make sure that if he does have to go back to his usual halftime substitutions, that he's making the right changes at the right time, etc. as well. But Ross, you are the manager of Rangers on Sunday. Does James Tavernier start for you?
Yes, it does, and I'll tell you why. It's because our defensive record, particularly domestically, since the previous international break, i.e., after the Old Firm, has actually been very good. You go back and you look, obviously, the Leon game, that was a bit of a chase in that, especially at the time, Cammy. I think everyone thought 4 going on 14 on the night. We did get an absolute battering defensively, but kept clean sheets in every other game we played going into that international break. And a wee bit like what I said about Tom Lawrence, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I would stick with that settled back 4/5 if you include Butland right now. And then if things start to go awry there, then you would change it. But I think I spoke to you about this on a previous section that we did as well. Maybe if you kind of keep that solidity and allow that new bond of relationships to build up over time, then you will reap the rewards of that. And I think you've seen that in areas going into the previous international break, and then obviously the one that we're just coming out of now. You can see the fruits of that coming to fruition with that record of clean sheets and that really good defensive record that we're starting to build up. So I wouldn't be rushing to change much in that back five if it was up to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And listen, as I say, I know that people will want to see Casemiro starting. I think we just have to. We have to also understand that he has been away on international duty. James Tavernier has not, so therefore my hope is that he's had some decent recovery time and we can get some energy out of him as well. So yeah, it will be very, very interesting. And my real hope more than anything else, Ross, is that we completely ignore whatever result comes out of the Celtic Aberdeen game on Saturday afternoon. This is about what we have to do and make sure that we go down there almost with a a lust to make sure that we get this game dealt with nice and in a nice, easy manner, ideally as quickly as we can, and then potentially we could see some rotation for some of the players that we've been talking about. I would just love us to try and make it as easy as we can on ourselves.
Yeah, we have not earned the right to care about what the result is on Saturday afternoon. You need to earn the right to be able to look at your opponents and hopefully put pressure on their result, or at least get in their head that they need to go and win the game. We've not earned that right, let's be honest, so let's completely discount whatever happened between Celtic and Aberdeen. What we need to focus on is, as you correctly said, Cammy, going to Rugby Park, hopefully putting in a good performance, ideally killing that game early on, and then you can start to maybe rotate Tav out and rotate Dessers out and start to see if you can build other wee bits of relationships in there as well. But first of all, what you've got to do is you've got to go and win the game. First and foremost, an absolute non-negotiable, because while we have not earned the right to look at Celtic or Aberdeen's results so far, if we don't win on Sunday and say either one of those sides do, then we're really, really in an uphill battle at that point, more so than what we are at the minute. Nobody ever wants to say never, but that's the situation and the reality we would face. So first and foremost, focus on yourself, go and win the game, and then however the chips fall, they fall.
Yep, I think that's entirely fair. A great summation, as per usual. That's why you're so good at this, Ross. That's why I always
Oh, I
enjoy
bet you say
having
it
you
to
on
all
the
the boys.
show. Folks, that will do us for this week on Extra. Just to give you a little heads up as well, I'm very, very pleased to announce that we have been able to continue our sponsorship with our good friends Nord. If you're looking to be able to get your VPN sorted for the next, well, at least 2 years, you'd be able to go on and get a discount on nord.com/heart and hand. You can try it now and you'll get 4 extra months on your 2-year plan. So you'll get a little bit of a saving in there. And it's also risk-free and you've got a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you very much to all of the team at NordVPN for continuing to support our little podcast. Thank you to our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. Thank you to you all for listening. It wouldn't be Extra unless I gave our Patreon site a wee plug as well. So head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand. You will get a whole load of shows every single day for less than £2 a month. It is an absolute bargain. And there's loads of stuff in there from all your Rangers related material from our daily update. We will also do a look back in time across previous Rangers games. Manager spells. We'll cover the Champions League. We cover the European games. Ross mentioned before as well, we do loads of stuff as well for the other sides of Rangers too, which again, like I say, is all of your essential listening. So please head on over there if you'd like to join our community. But most importantly for this week, thank you so much to Ross for coming on and joining me. Some great insight as per usual, my friend. My hope is that people continue to listen even after you said that you're still a Scotland fan.
I was about to say it was a pleasure always, mate, but yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
Right, folks, David will be back on Monday with Flagship to unpack the weekend's events down at Kilmarnock. I hope you have a brilliant weekend. Let's get 3 points on Sunday, Rangers. And let's see as to how we are moving ever closer to Fleet Clermont's dream Rangers side. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.